Growing up on the farm was all I had ever known. The smell of fresh hay in the morning, the sound of the cows lowing as they awaited their morning feed, the sight of the sun rising over the fields, casting a warm golden light across the landscape. It was home. I had always taken pride in the work my family did, raising livestock and cultivating the land. It wasn't an easy life, but it was honest, and there was a certain satisfaction that came from seeing the fruits of our labor take shape. But as I grew older, it became clear that the farm wasn't thriving the way it used to. The land seemed to be losing its fertility, the cows weren't producing as much milk, and the once abundant harvests were dwindling. My father, who had always been a strong and steady presence in my life, began to show signs of weariness. I could see the worry etched into his face as he tried to figure out how to keep the farm going. The reality was hard to face. There wasn't enough work for me on the farm anymore. My father had to let go of a few of our hired hands because we simply couldn't afford to keep them on. It was a blow to our family, and it made me realize that my future on the farm was uncertain. I had always imagined taking over for my father one day, but now that dream seemed farther away than ever. One evening, after a particularly tough day, my father and I sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The silence between us was heavy, filled with unspoken fears and doubts. I finally broke the silence. "Pa, I want to stay on the farm," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "But I don't see how I can if things keep going the way they are." My father sighed, his eyes fixed on the fading light. "I know, son. It's been tough lately, and I wish I had better answers for you. The land just isn't what it used to be, and the cows, well, they aren't producing like they used to either. It's hard to keep things going." I could hear the pain in his voice, the frustration of not being able to provide the future he had always hoped for me. But despite the challenges, I couldn't shake the feeling that the farm was where I belonged. I wanted to find a way to make it work, to prove that the farm could still thrive, and that I could play a part in its success. It was around this time that I started hearing about manifestation. A friend of mine, who had gone off to the city, came back for a visit and told me about it. He talked about how he had used it to land a great job, even though the odds had been against him. At first, I was skeptical. It sounded too good to be true. Just think about what you want, believe it will happen, and it will. But as I listened to his story, something clicked. Maybe, just maybe, this was something that could help me too. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, thinking about the farm, about my father, and about the future I wanted. I thought about the cows, about how their low fertility rates had been one of the biggest problems we faced. What if I could somehow change that? What if, through sheer will and belief, I could help the cows become more fertile, produce more calves, and in turn, help the farm prosper again? It seemed like a wild idea, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. The farm needed something to turn things around, and maybe this was it. I decided to give it a try. The next morning, before heading out to do my chores, I took a few minutes to sit quietly in the barn, surrounded by the familiar sounds and smells of the animals. I closed my eyes and began to visualize what I wanted. I pictured the cows healthy and strong, producing calf after calf, the barn filled with the sound of newborns, and the farm thriving once again. I focused on that image, holding on to it as tightly as I could, and repeated to myself that it was going to happen. At first, it felt strange, like I was playing pretend. But I kept at it every day, taking a few minutes to visualize the outcome I wanted and to believe that it was possible. I even started talking to the cows as I fed them, telling them they were going to be healthy, that they were going to produce lots of calves, and that the farm was going to be just fine. Days turned into weeks, and I kept up my practice, even when it felt like nothing was changing. I didn't talk to my father about what I was doing, partly because I wasn't sure how he'd react, and partly because I wanted to see if it would work before saying anything. Then, one day, something remarkable happened. My father came into the barn with a look of surprise on his face. "You won't believe this," he said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "3 of the cows are pregnant, all at once. We haven't had that happen in years." My heart leaped. It was exactly what I had been visualizing, and now it was happening. I tried to stay calm, but inside I was bursting with excitement. Was this really the result of my manifestation practice? It seemed too incredible to be a coincidence. As the weeks went on, more cows became pregnant, and soon we had a whole new herd of calves running around the farm. The change was nothing short of miraculous. My father was astounded, and I finally told him what I had been doing. At first, he was skeptical, much like I had been when I first heard about manifestation. But as the evidence continued to mount, more calves, healthier cows, and an overall improvement in the farm's productivity, he started to believe. The farm, which had been on the brink of collapse, was now thriving. We had more work than we could handle, and I was able to stay on the farm, just as I had always wanted. The success of the farm didn't go unnoticed. Word spread through the community about our newfound prosperity, and people started coming to us for advice. They wanted to know what we were doing differently, how we had managed to turn things around so quickly. I told them about manifestation, about how I had focused on what I wanted and believed it would happen. Some of them were skeptical, but others were intrigued, and a few even started practicing it themselves. As the years went by, the farm continued to grow. We expanded our operations, bought more land, and even hired back some of the workers we had let go. My father, who had once been worried about the future, was now full of pride and optimism. We were able to provide for our family and contribute to the community, and I knew that I had found my place in the world. Looking back on those early days, I am still amazed at how much things have changed. What started as a desperate attempt to save the farm turned into a journey of self-discovery and empowerment. I learned that the mind is a powerful tool, capable of shaping our reality in ways we can't even imagine. I also learned that with belief, determination, and hard work, anything is possible. My name is Tomas, and this is my story, a story of hope, determination, and the incredible power of the human spirit. A story that proves that even in the most difficult of circumstances, we have the power to change our lives and create a better future for ourselves and those we love. And as I look out at the mountains that have been my home for so long, I know that the journey is far from over, and that there are still many more dreams to pursue and challenges to overcome. The success of the farm didn't just stop at the cows. Once the fertility rates increased, I began to focus on other areas. I thought about the crops, how they too had been struggling, and I started to apply the same manifestation techniques. Each morning, I'd spend a few minutes visualizing the fields bursting with healthy, abundant crops. I imagined the soil rich and fertile, the plants growing tall and strong, and our harvests being better than ever. My father noticed the change in me. He saw that I was more hopeful, more determined. We didn't talk much about the specifics of what I was doing, but he knew something was different. He started to join me in the early mornings, walking through the fields together as the sun rose, and I could tell he was beginning to believe in the possibility of a better future too. It wasn't long before we started seeing results. The crops began to thrive, growing faster and stronger than they had in years. Our neighbors, who had been struggling with similar issues, couldn't believe what they were seeing. They started coming to us for advice, asking what we were doing to turn things around. My father, always modest, would just smile and say, "We're taking good care of the land, that's all." But I knew it was more than that. It was the power of belief, of focusing on what we wanted and trusting that it would come to fruition. And it wasn't just about the crops or the cows, it was about the whole farm, about our lives. We were manifesting a future that was brighter than the one we had been facing before. As the months passed, our farm became a beacon of success in the community. We were able to sell our produce at the local market, and people started coming from neighboring towns to buy from us. We expanded our operations, bringing in new equipment and hiring back some of the workers we had lost. It was an incredible turnaround, and I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride in what we had achieved. My father, who had once been worn down by the weight of the farm's struggles, was now full of energy and enthusiasm. He started talking about the future again, about how we could continue to grow and improve. We even began to discuss the possibility of expanding the farm, buying more land, and increasing our livestock. The farm had become more than just a place to live and work. It had become a symbol of what was possible when we believed in ourselves and in the power of our minds. I started sharing my experiences with others, teaching them about manifestation and how it had changed our lives. Some were skeptical, just as I had been at first, but many were willing to give it a try. And as they began to see the results in their own lives, the belief started to spread. Tomas's story became one of hope and inspiration for others in the community. People who had once been struggling began to find their own paths to success, and the whole area started to thrive. The farm, which had once been on the brink of collapse, was now a thriving, prosperous place, full of life and abundance. And as I stood in the fields, looking out at the land that had been my home for so long, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the lessons I had learned, for the challenges we had overcome, and for the incredible power of belief. I knew that the journey wasn't over, that there would always be new challenges to face and new dreams to pursue. But I also knew that with the power of manifestation, anything was possible. The farm had taught me that life is what we make of it, that our thoughts and beliefs have the power to shape our reality. And as I looked to the future, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I had the tools to create the life I wanted. The farm had been saved, our lives had been transformed, and I had found my purpose. And for that, I would always be grateful.